going to stream live. Going to play some intro music. It's going to get loud here for a second, but bear with me. All right. Thank you, Jack.
Do not fully understand.
Oh my God. You fools.
Hey, welcome back to another Night Talk Live. My name is Midnight Mike. I'm here with Jack Cary of Paranormal Intelligence Report. That's your website, isn't it, Jack? And Paranormal Intelligence Agency, I'm sorry.
Right.
And you can go, the link is in the description, and it's in the podcast notes as well. He's got daily intel reports, very active in the paranormal, cryptozoology, ufology. He's a founding and current director of the Paranormal Intelligence Agency and Research at Crypto Four Corners. In the past, he has received top secret S.C.I. security clearance, serving as an encrypted communications specialist on nuclear submarines. And he's a published author as well. Thank you, Jack, for taking the time out of your busy day to come in here and bullshit with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, man. I saw you on Regina Meredith's show on GAIA TV, and
Right.
I saw you talking about Bigfoot and Dogman, and then also, I mean, it was just a whole host of different subjects, and then you got into Missing 411, and you touched on Antarctica. It was, and you tied it together so well. I was like, oh my God, does anybody know this guy? Can I get him on my show? And it turns out one of my friends or one of the listeners is friends with one of your friends, and I think that's how this all happened. So thank you to everyone who listens.
Absolutely. No, it's my pleasure to be here and talk about some weirdness with you.
So one of the most popular topics that is going on, I think, in the paranormal and conspiracy community is Missing 411. And you had an interesting theory when it comes to quartz crystals and granite deposits, and how that might explain some people going missing. Can you give us a brief rundown on your theory?
Absolutely. I call it the Mach Effect theory. And really, to make a long story short, all through paranormal investigation history in this country, going back decades, a number of paranormal researchers have identified areas around this particular country and around the world, for that matter, that they refer to as vortex or portal areas. And when you begin to study the history of those areas, you find that these are all areas where the indigenous Indian populations held sacred, places that they would describe as being places where the veil between worlds is thin, etc., and so on. And what we discover when we look at these places are vast deposits of both mineral quartz crystal and limestone. And in some areas like Sedona, Arizona, for example, you can study aeromagnetic maps of the mountain ranges there, and they have electromagnetic fields being produced by this underground topography that are in excess of 500 times more powerful than the surrounding electromagnetic fields. And the same thing is proving true in each one of these areas. And that led me into the idea that it might just be a viable scientific explanation that in each one of these areas where you have high deposits of crystal and limestone, you might have fields being generated that are so strong that they could possibly rip what physicists call the electromagnetic membrane that separates this particular dimension from others. What's fascinating is that in the last few years, there's been a scientist who's developed what he calls the Mach Effect thruster. And this is based on a very interesting new find, and that's that they've discovered that as mass travels through space, it creates minute fluctuations. and you can literally harness the power being generated by those minute fluctuations and use them as a form of space propulsion. And so he designed this interesting little device that some people believe will be the future of space propulsion. But when I was reading through his papers, I came across something very interesting called the Mach Effect, and there are various side effects of this occurrence taking place. And one of those side effects is the construction, natural formation of what he described as benign wormholes. And what you have with the Earth is basically the same thing that this scientist is taking advantage of in smaller, mass bodies. You have a massive body traveling through space that has these various quartz crystal deposits around that are, extremely large in nature. And as these as these small fluctuations in the mass of the body take place, it's causing the underground topography of quartz crystal to actually become compressed. And when it does, it exhibits electromagnetic membrane electromagnetic energy that could possibly tear this membrane or create a benign wormhole, as he describes in his papers. And it's possible that a lot of these cases are maybe somebody just takes a step and they literally disappear into another dimension for a while. It's interesting that in all of, when you look at the cluster maps for 411 missing cases, the majority are in national park areas, and it just so happens that it's in these mountainous areas where our national parks are that you find the largest deposits of quartz crystal. So that's kind of how it all ties together.
That is absolutely terrifying, probably for an individual who accidentally steps into a wormhole and then winds up underneath a tree or partially in a rock or something like that, because there's a lot of, at least from the books we read from Missing 411, David Paulides, that there are unusual, discoveries. People that will just randomly leave their house or wander away from something, and then next thing you know, they're found inside or next to rocks or boulders or in a body of water. It's such a fascinating topic when it comes to missing people. And it's a nice bridge for people who maybe are not necessarily into the paranormal topic or anything like that, and you ease them into Missing 411. That opens up a whole wide range of stuff. I'm not sure if you saw the Missing 411 documentary. Did you see that?
I did, actually. I've seen it, and I've listened to hundreds of hours of David Paulides interviews, and I've spoken with him. He actually works with GAIA quite a bit, and so my producer is very, very good friends with David Paulides, and has spoken with him about my theory, which he really, really exhibited a lot of interest in, and even on their main Can-Am Missing website, he's got a link to my article explaining the Mach Effect theory, which was really interesting to me that he decided to do that, and very proud that he decided to do that. But, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that could be the case. In one of the cases, there was a preteen boy, I believe he was 11, 12 years old, and he said that he walked through this sort of archway. He was out in the high desert around New Mexico and in northern New Mexico, and walked through this little archway. And he says the next thing he knows, he's 10 miles away up the road, sees a gas station down the road quite a ways, and walks to the gas station and calls his parents to come pick him up. And this happened in a very small period of time. One of the things that caught my attention was that on one of David's interviews on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, he mentioned that they were able to trace some missing ships and airplanes in the Bermuda Triangle at exactly the same day and time as some of these missing people that took place in national park areas. And that really caught my attention, and I began to think, wow, this is something that's got to be occurring on a global scale in multiple places simultaneously, and it's only through something like the Mach Effect that could be taking place.
In the Missing 411 documentary, they allude to a lot of different angles. They kind of set it up like a missing person murder mystery. I understand that to sell a movie a certain way, but they have Survivor Man on there talking and alluding to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and I found that to be interesting. But David Paulides doesn't come down really, at least not in public, on one way or the other what could be going on. You're a cryptozoologist. You have investigated Bigfoot, Dogman, anything unusual. You're like the Ghostbuster of cryptozoology.
Right.
In your opinion, does Sasquatch, Bigfoot, have anything to do with missing people in the national parks, at least related to Missing 411?
In some of the cases that could very well be the case. I'm not going to stand here and tell you. I'm not one of the Bigfoot guys in the Bigfoot community that'll stand here and tell you that these creatures aren't dangerous, because they are. You're talking about, at full grown, a 9 foot tall, 600 to 800 pound bipedal apex predator roaming around the woods of North America. And anybody that's studied anything about nature will tell you that's that's a formula for a problem. And in some of these cases, it could be a Sasquatch randomly. We've discovered in our field investigations that really the only ones that appear to be dangerous and aggressive are the younger males who are of breeding age during breeding season. The rest of them seem pretty docile, even though some people have had some pretty scary encounters with females of the species as well. But we've had a number of cases that we've investigated where it would indicate that somebody was taken by a Sasquatch. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you that doesn't happen. However, the vast number of the 411 cases would argue against it, as well as some of the minor details involved in those cases where there just doesn't seem to be any sort of animal involvement at all.
I brought up on the screen here an article I talked about maybe about 2 years ago on the show because I found it to be bizarre. And it's hard to discern eyewitness testimony, what is like just an invented story for publicity and attention, versus a credible actual story. And I have up here on the headline here, woman claims to be in a sexual relationship with Bigfoot, trying for a baby. And she goes on to say, like, she had repeated encounters with this Bigfoot having sex with a Sasquatch in a marijuana field. How do you discern when you're on the scene and you're actually investigating a cryptozoological case? How do you discern what is a credible eyewitness testimony versus someone that is very sensational? Like, to wrap your head around this, if you're just coming to the subject, you're gonna blow off this woman. Oh yeah, she's banging a Bigfoot. But would you put any validity into this case, knowing what you know now?
Well, no. When somebody makes an outright claim like that, it would take a huge amount of evidence for me to to say, yeah, there could be something to that. I can tell you that in a majority of our early on cases working with the now deceased world famous J.C. Johnson, who was my mentor in cryptozoology, and he was the founder of Crypto Four Corners, hence my involvement with them now. And I'm sort of carrying on the torch with Crypto Four Corners for J.C. because he had such a vast body of work that was a real contribution to the field. But most of our cases where we started working together investigating Sasquatch, or what he referred to as the furry people, it was on Navajo Indian reservation land in northern New Mexico, in areas literally, I don't think a lot of people just can't wrap their head around how vast some of these reservation areas are and just how remote they are. Where you get off the single blacktop that goes through it and you're on roads that don't even qualify as roads, they are trails. And there were time and again where we would go to where a Navajo had reported to the Navajo Police Department that they had a sighting of what they call Yaetzo. It's their word for Bigfoot. And we would find these people who have no electricity, no running water, no internet, no television, telling us things that they could have only have been exposed to if they were somebody who sat around and watched Bigfoot documentaries nonstop. And you add to that the sheer vast amount of physical evidence being left at these sites. The first case I went on with JC, I walked over this hill from where this Navajo had an encounter and came across a stretch of 16.5-inch footprints that were pristine on, hard pan soil. Indented in this hard pan soil. A creature had to have weighed 600 to 800 pounds to even leave a footprint there, because we had stepped next to it and there'd be nothing. And you look at the fact that Shaquille O'Neal's got a footprint size 16.
Yeah.
So
Andre the Giant, I watched his documentary size 22 right there last night.
Right,
Yeah.
and you gotta think to yourself, wow, this was either a human being the size of Shaquille O'Neal out here in the middle of literally nowhere, trying to perpetrate a hoax in the hopes that somebody like me and JC Johnson would come across it. Is incredulous to think, that every one of these things are hoaxed. Some of the areas where we would find different physical evidence traces are just so hard to get to that to think somebody went out there to try to perpetrate a hoax is ridiculous.
I mean, you have to go to a certain length. Yeah, obviously, some people want to create something to make a name for themselves, but some of it is so out of the realm of possibility that, yeah, I'm with you. When it comes to Sasquatch and even some of the more unknown cryptids, I would say like Dogman or Goatman, you have a military background. Does the military care about any of these weird things? Do they know about it? Do they investigate it? Do you have any insight into that?
Well, we think they obviously know about these creatures. There's a number of credible cases where the witnesses had some sort of interaction with a Bigfoot-like creature, only to be approached by what a ufologist would call a man in black. Agents from the government coming to tell them not to talk about it. We've got some peripheral evidence coming from a gentleman named Bob Garrett, who's now famous in sort of the inner rings of the Bigfoot community. He's never been on television or radio or anything, but he's a very respected researcher, telling us that he literally saw video footage of what the Parks Department, an agent in the Parks Department, was calling a kill site, where apparently there were campers who were killed by a Sasquatch creature. This thing left gigantic footprints all around, DNA in the form of hair, and this was covered up as a bear attack. When you have accounts coming in like that from sources that really aren't looking for notoriety in any way, and certainly not money, you have to ask, what would be the possible motive for trying to make something like that up, so they could fool a couple of Bigfoot researchers who the world already considers crazy. I mean, it just doesn't, the math isn't good.
When it comes to being considered crazy, because when you dive into this stuff, you're considered crazy. When you talk about UFOs or Bigfoot, you're Looney Tunes, according to a lot of people, and in the normal filters of reality. What does your family think about what you do and how you spend your time diving into this stuff?
Well, my family's used to it now, and you have to consider that they are constantly exposed to highly credible evidence that I've been able to show them over the course of 2 decades. So, they're by and large convinced of especially of the cases that I've investigated on a personal basis. As far as the material goes that I post on the Paranormal Intelligence Agency website, that is every bit of that evidence is heavily vetted. There's a lot of paranormal websites out there that'll post literally any account just in order to get clicks or hits on the website. And I decided when I started the PIA that we would focus solely on quality over quantity, and really kind of dig into the cases that apparently were very real and see if we could prove otherwise. And, it's been over 2 decades now, and I've come across some things that just cannot be explained, and have convinced me. I saw a Sasquatch from 20 feet away, so I know the creatures are real. You often know that you have a credible eyewitness when their life is literally changed by the encounter, and they don't want anybody else to know about it. You know what I mean? And that's happened numerous times.
Yeah, and just as an aside, up on paranormalintelligenceagency.com, your most recent post is about Dogman, and you have a very up-to-date website. I mean, you do a good job at staying current with what you find and present it in a very concise way with pictures and links to video. So yeah, check that out. The link's in the description of this video.
Right.
When it comes to Bigfoot, big feet, and UFOs, do you think there's any correlation? And I say that because there was a documentary out about the Kecksburg UFO event by Small Town Monsters, and they made a pretty good correlation with the wave of cryptid observations preceding and then after the Kecksburg UFO event in the 1970s.
Yeah, and there's a very credible statistic out there that roams around the darker corners of the Bigfoot community, and most of the Bigfoot investigators that I know, and I know all of the main players in that field, the guys that are the real deal out in the field 250 days out of every year, doing the groundwork it's going to take in order to finally prove it to the public. But and at least 20% of what we would consider to be very, very credible Bigfoot sightings and interactions, the eyewitness also reports having seen a UFO at the same time. That's something that has really bothered a lot of paranormal investigators and, solely cryptozoologists, Bigfoot investigators for a very long time. And I went on a particular case that we call the track line case in New Mexico. And this is an area where JC, my partner at the time, had investigated a sighting and went over this little ridge and found a 1/4 of a mile long track line of 19-inch footprints. Now, these footprints are going through sandy desert, and they start in a wilderness area, and they go right out to the middle of a vast, long field that, by all rights, the prints should have continued after the 1/4 of a mile, and this thing literally takes what we call 2 running steps. I mean, you could tell where it's walking, and it kind of busts into a run at the end, which is interesting because the strides went from 6 feet apart from foot to footprint to 10 feet apart from foot to footprint. So this was a creature that was walking and then all of a sudden burst into a run, and then very mysteriously the footprints just stop, like in mid-stride.
So it either hopped into some kind of limbo, it flew straight up into the air, went into orbit. I mean, how do you really explain that in rational, we consider rational terms?
Right. A lot of Bigfoot guys and investigators will tell you that they believe that these things are somehow interdimensional and that they can travel between dimensions, and what we call in the community woo, WOO, those are the woo theories, or regarding Bigfoot. I came up with a unique theory because I've investigated so much UFO activity over the years and alien abductees that our DNA testing of Sasquatch's DNA, which we found at 2 different sites, and part of this was in the Melba Ketchum DNA review. We had over 100 samples in it. They proved that the mitochondrial side of DNA from these Sasquatch creatures was in fact modern day human. Goes back 12 to 15,000 years ago during the Younger Dryas period, and according to her particular findings, it appears that during the Younger Dryas, which was a period where a comet had actually impacted the Earth, there was a megafaunal extinction taking place of all kinds of species of animals and plants. And it was during this period that a mating interaction took place between an unknown relic hominid species, just meaning that, the fossilized remains of this particular species have not been recovered yet, apparently interbred with archaic human females, and that's what led to the lineage that we call Sasquatch. And that ties together with modern day UFO abduction cases, because it's my personal theory that these creatures, because they have in part some human DNA, are being abducted for their DNA, just like human abductees are.
That's very interesting. I just opened up the phone lines, 614-388-9109. If you have a question for Jack or anyone, the phone lines are now open. I have often thought that the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, could be the boots on the ground for whatever alien presence might be here on Earth. Oh, boy. And we have a phone call right here. Teddy Spaghetti, go ahead.
Holy crap, I was calling in just waiting for these lines to open. I am excited. I love these shows when you bring somebody. It's Jack, right?
That's right.
All right, this is great. I have a couple questions, just two. One somewhat serious. By the way, how's it going, guys? I'm just excited.
Good.
Bigfoot's awesome. The first question is about, I believe 7 years ago, there was a documentary either on a Nat Geo or Discovery Channel with a famous Bigfoot guy. He's the one who does the tracks and was talking about the lines on the foot. I think he was a primatologist or something. But he's like really well known in the community. And in that documentary, they're bringing up scat samples. And in one of the samples of the alleged Bigfoot scat, they found a parasite that they couldn't identify. And it seemed like it was related to the same type of parasite that would be in a human and the same type of parasite that would be in a chimp, but like a cross between the two of them. And these types of parasites are basically very, they can only be in one species. So it had to have a unique host, but they couldn't figure out what host that parasite belonged to. So the wondering is, was it Bigfoot? Have you heard anything about that, and has anything else come of that?
I'm pretty sure you're talking about Dr. Jeff Meldrum at Idaho State University, and he's the one that studies the bipedal tracks of the animals, and he's basically the world's most credible scientist who's engaged in Bigfoot research at this time. And I do remember that. I think it's even more interesting that he traveled to a place called Snell Grove Lake in Canada, and this was featured on the Discovery Channel's Monster Quest show, I believe, and it's called Sasquatch Attack. And during that period, the man who owns the only fishing cabin on this extremely remote lake in Canada, I mean, you can only get there by boat plane, had an incident where a creature broke into the cabin and literally destroyed this cabin. I mean, you've never seen such devastation. Whatever this was, it picked up the bathtub, a porcelain bathtub, up off the ground and slammed it down on the ground so hard that it broke into pieces. And he, of course, when he came across the damage, thought, oh my God, this must have been bears. So he decides he's going to get a bunch of boards and hammer nails through them and place them in front of different doorways around the cabin, and as a deterrent. So if the bear comes up to the door, it'll step on these nails and take off running. Well, he comes back in about 2 weeks after having done this, and he walks up to the board with the nails at the front door, and there's a gigantic man-like footprint in blood left on this board. And even that DNA was tested by a scientist in Minnesota who was on the expedition, and it came back with the same findings that Melba Ketchum did, that this thing was in fact part human. Now, a lot of other DNA experts like Todd Disotell at New York University will tell you, well, that's because it had to have been a contaminated sample. All of these samples they're calling contaminated because it shows human DNA, because it's such a hard reality for them to swallow.
Yeah, Teddy, you got that, pal?
Yeah, no. I'm definitely on the side of that. If Bigfoot's a tangible creature and not not sort of like a phantom or interdimensional, that it's definitely got to be in lineage to us. It has to be a close relative of some sort, or maybe even a hybridization. Maybe Stalin exceeded and made his monkey army, and it was just, these are the secret Soviet sleeper cells. I doubt that's it, but
well,
yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, thank you, Teddy. I appreciate your call. He's got to go pretty soon, so I'm going to hang up on you, Teddy, okay?
Well, one question,
Sure.
real question.
Sure.
Quick, and I'm sorry to do this to you. The size of Bigfoot's penis. What's the speculation? Yes. After that question, I shall go.
What is the size of Bigfoot's penis? It comes up over and over again on the show. We want to know.
Had to do it for the chat. Had to do it for the show. Sorry.
Sure. I agree. Do you have any speculation about Bigfoot or cryptid genitalia?
I don't, but we'll have to ask the lady who's apparently having a love affair with one in a field.
It comes up over and over again. It does. I'm curious about that because sometimes you want to know if something's real or not. You look down and you want to see what they got. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a sick freak. But if we could look into that, that'd be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, Teddy. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the questions. And
very pleased. Y'all have a good one. Thank you very much. And that's about all.
All right, bye. I'll blow you up. There he goes. I know, Jack, you're very busy. You got plans. I really appreciate your time. How can people support you and, continue to follow you? I know you're on Twitter at Para Intel Agency. Is there any other way that people can support you and find you?
They can. We have a Facebook channel, Paranormal Intelligence Agency, getting ready to start a YouTube channel. But the easiest way to support the PIA, and all funds go directly to our field investigation work. This is done on our own time and our own dime 90% of the time. So, but you can go to the website paranormalintelligenceagency.com. I sell $10 a year subscriptions to our special Deep Black reports, which is very in-depth, multi-page reports that I write on any given number of paranormal phenomenon taking place. And you can also go to Patreon at Paranormal Intelligence Agency and support us there. There's donate buttons on various pages on the website. So if you want to help support us and bring the truth to light to the American public, we appreciate the support.
Well, I'm signing up tonight. You told me when you're on Regina Meredith, you speak very proficiently about all subjects. I'm a big fan. I'm going to sign up for the Intel Report for $10 a year. Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah, $10 a year is all I charge because we're not trying to get rich. We're just trying to come up with enough funding to actually spend more and more time investigating these mysteries. So.
But if you happen to get rich, that'd be great too.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jack. I really appreciate your time. I hope to talk to you in the future, and I'll definitely check out the Deep Intel Report, and I got all the links in the description. Please check out Jack Cary. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you, Mike.
All right, have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, there goes Jack. He had some plans tonight. I really appreciate his time. And the phone lines are back open, 614-388-9109. And I'll be mostly happy to take some phone calls from you. And we can talk about some other cryptozoological stuff. I had so many questions for him. And I know that seemed rushed because it was. I got notes, motherfucker, that I wanted to get to, and I couldn't get to them. And I tried to weave it all together. And I did as best I could. We knew we only had about a half hour. And there's so many more things. I wanted to get into more about the Kecksburg UFO, Bigfoot connection. I wanted to get more into the military and possibly scientific presence with Skinwalker Ranch. I wanted to dig a little bit more into his personal life to see really how his passion for the paranormal and even conspiracy theories may impact his personal life, and if it does at all. Didn't get a chance to even. He touched on personal encounters a little bit about seeing a Bigfoot 20 feet away, which is great. God, I'd either shit or piss my pants. I'd probably take a crap or a shit. I don't know which one it would be. Caller?
Excuse me.
Oh, excuse me. Jordan, you're on the air, my friend.
Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hey, you just missed Jack Cary, who was on the air with us. He had to go. He had to run.
Yeah, I'm sorry if it's going to be hard for you to understand. I recently accidentally bit my tongue, so it's like really freaking hard to talk.
Why'd you do that?
Huh?
Why did you do that on purpose?
It was an accident.
Oh, it was,
Really
okay.
fucked it up.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I had to go to the hospital for it. It was like a really bad bite. But anyway, I wanted to call because Jack was on and you were discussing about, the secrecy with what's going on with, either Bigfoot or Dogman. And I was going to get with him, well, with both of you together. But since he's gone, I want to ask you, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's a online Wikipedia/forum called SCP, which is basically it's the X-Files meets, well, if you want to say the Deep State. And basically it's about a secret government organization that catalogs any kind of like paranormal or supernatural activities, objects, humans, Bigfoots, whatever you want to call them. But one particular thing they were discussing was that in this particular story, allegedly that Bigfoots or whatever exactly the creatures like Bigfoots were possibly an advanced civilization that evolved along with us, and whatever certain particular reasons, they were either outbred by us or outkilled by us to certain points where the only ones we see now are the Bigfoots of what are described of today. And I thought it was kind of interesting that you were talking, well, maybe it might be a truth to it, to where maybe the government knows that it's possible that these could have been creatures that were advanced race that lives beside us, and possibly maybe we had conflicts with them, and now we are the dominant species.
Well, Jack kind of went into that a little bit about he has a theory. Maybe about 10 to 12,000 years ago, there was some sort of event, either comet, some sort of cataclysm, and in order for some sort of species to be preserved, there was a human race, and then another race had sex, and that produced the Bigfoot, if I remember correctly what he said. So there was some sort of interspecies breeding, which, from what I read, is common when there is a catastrophic event, that there will be, while they're not exactly related species, they're close enough to where they can actually breed. And that might be what happened and which spawned Bigfoot. But there's so much history that's covered up. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the race of giants. We've talked about even other cryptozoological stuff. I suspect that actual history is not being told to us, and it's being watered down. Like everything fucking else. Everything else is watered down.
So do you think it's like, because the whole SCP thing is kind of like it's sort of like demand, like it's sort of, they're based on, either legends or some hints of like they said, Bigfoot, and they're like cryptozoological creatures, and then they kind of add and spice whatever they want to the stories. But it does seem, I always had this mindset that maybe if the governments around the world or sort of organizations do know about these, let's say, paranormal creatures or any ghosts or anything that's paranormal, supernatural, and that maybe shows like the X-Files and other kind of stuff are like, what's the word? A little tiny leakage of maybe there's truth to some of these things. Like
gentle
like
disclosure.
Jack was saying that.
That's called that's called gentle disclosure. It's a form of letting the public know what might be possible. And that's been a rumor that might be happening, ranging from various UFO movies to introduce people to the possibility that we might be visited by another race of beings from another star system. But when it comes to the past and history, legends, and myths, I'm now of the opinion that most of those legends or myths come from a place of truth. They may have been kind of manipulated over time, but as like up on screen, I have like dog-headed man of India, that's a real legend. Or there's actually the Dogman of an island, like the Odyssey and Homer's Tale. Like, there's so many different stories from long ago. It's hard to brush off once you start digging into all this shit. Yeah, if you just learn about it in school, it's like, oh, these are just myths and legends. They didn't really actually happen. But once you start finding out, oh, there might be giants and skeletons somewhere out there in the desert and mounds and then UFOs and Bigfoot, it gives a little bit more credence to all this weirder stuff that might be like, it might not be myths or history, or might not just be myths and legend. It actually might be genuine history to a certain degree. It'll throw your mind. It'll throw your mind into chaos. Oh my God!
But that's what Daddy Alex wants us to have. He wants us to have chaos and gay frogs.
Does Daddy Alex want that? I don't know.
I think so.
That's right.
All right. All right. Jordan, thank you. I'm gonna move on a little bit here.
Sure thing, Mike. Have a good one.
Appreciate the call. Bye. Take it easy. See you around. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Okay, thank you for your call.
After a while, crocodile. See you later, alligator. Take it easy. I said that one already. Yeah, up on the screen here, I have a list. Oh, from listverse.com. Oh, we love lists here on Night Talk and OBDM. We love lists. Oh, my God. We love lists so much. And the one I brought up to Jordan was the dog-headed men of India. A Greek physician named... I don't want to read. He was named something. I can't read that word. Traveled out to India back in the 5th century BC and came back with some crazy stories. Up in the mountains, he claimed, there were a tribe called the Cary, and they had heads of dogs. They speak no language, but they bark like dogs, he said. They could understand the other people of India, he claimed, but had to reply by barking or using sign language. And there was no small number of them. By his account, his best guess, there were about 120,000 of these dog-like creatures, dogmen creatures. But the really weird part is, though, is that people actually backed up his story. About 200 years later, a man named Mega Strings, I'm not going to pronounce it. I should stop talking, but I'll go on with the story. Followed the previous person's path into India and reported back that his claims were real. He had seen these dogmen for himself. So it wasn't just the Greeks. The Indians had these as well. And there's like a Greek island that had a story of men as well. And Jack Cary talked about that in his Regina Meredith episode. I wish I could read. You know, I wish I could read like at the level of like a 6th grader. I don't understand sometimes how my mind works. I can program Python. I can read sometimes normally. Then at other times, when you give me words I don't recognize, I fail over and over again. I got the phone lines back over at 614-388-9109. I'll be around here for another few minutes. And the website that Jordan referenced, the SCP Foundation, you can check it out at scp-wiki.net. And it has a whole host of links, and it looks like a classic like BBS forum. And a lot of different things going on there. And I think this is it. A lot of different accounts. I don't know how, I guess it's mobile. You might be able to get on your phone. I don't know how legible it's going to be, though. So you can check that out. All right. I'm going to move on. We're going to get away from this a little bit. I'm going to clear the air after my disastrous reading. Yeah. All right. We did have a few more things that I wanted to talk to Jack about. Definitely want to talk about the Dogman thing. Because the Dogman subject is, well, you might say, hey, Dogman, Bigfoot, they got to be linked. They're both like cryptozoological creatures. But there's more sightings of Bigfoot than Dogman. These Dogman creatures are fucking insane. You might be able to relate to a Bigfoot in some way. But Dogman, that's just a weird, like a Sasquatch is like, you would say, oh, you're like a hybrid between a human and an ape, but you just happen to be giant. But a Dogman, hybrid and a human and like a wolf or a dog, asinine, completely bonkers. So this next thing that I want to talk to you guys about, if you please, we're going to move on here to this story, is about UFOs. We'll talk about UFOs a little bit right here. A listener in the Slack chat submitted this, I believe. And if you're interested in joining the Slack chat, you can send an email to ourbigdumbbmouth@gmail.com. And I will admit you to the Slack if you want to interact with Joe and I and all the other people to listen. And a story was submitted there. And this says, aliens at Dugway Proving Grounds, spaceships taking off from the new Area 51. And the Dugway Proving Grounds comes up if you watch UFO documentaries and are even halfway interested in the history of military test craft. This comes up over and over again. As home to 1,400 residents, you might call Dugway Proving Ground the ultimate gated community. There are an estimate 300 miles of roads around Dugway, but residents have clearance to only a fraction of the secret area surrounding this mysterious place in Utah's West Desert. Conspiracy theorists claim that Dugway is the new Area 51 and that the U.S. government's secret programs are hiding extraterrestrial technology that could liberate us from our fossil fuel-based dependency for energy. A friend and I thought we would stop in and see what we could find out. Are you just going to drop by a military installation and see what you can find out? I'm sure they would wave you in with fanfare, horns, and they're going to release doves and shoot a cannon in your honor by just stopping in. The inhospitable, wide-swept Pony Express Road led to Dugway lies in the middle of nowhere. We entered the gates by showing my Utah state legislator's pass credentials. Oh, man of government. But we were told that we must still check in with security to gain permission for our tour. While we were waiting to speak to Dugway's PR director, we watched a group of men wearing bulletproof vests with sidearms enter Dugway's main gate in black Ford Excursions. They appear to be Army Special Forces. One man told me he was there for anti-terrorist training. After a 30-minute wait, I was denied access because I had an unpaid ticket on my driving record. Well, they get you for anything. My colleague was denied because he wasn't an American citizen. After being escorted by the police, I began to wonder what was really going on there. Well, you can just do like a little cursory research on the net and kind of find out. But this is a very thorough article. It is linked in the description of this video if you want to read it. I myself, as you know, if you're any sort of listener to this show, I like to skip to like the last two paragraphs to kind of wind it up. And since we only got about 10 minutes left, I think I'll skip to these last two paragraphs. In recent years, there has been an increase in the displays of incredible extraterrestrial light shows and spacecraft, including incidents in China, Russia, Norway, and Arizona. Although these events have been covered by the mainstream media, few questions have been asked regarding the top secret programs and huge funding gaps in military spending. It's time that at least non-mainstream media and the public began demanding answers. It's time that at least non-mainstream media and the public begin demanding answers. That's what we've been doing for fucking years. All these questions about UFOs and paranormal began in non-mainstream media and in the public. It's the mainstream media that aren't doing their fucking job by answering questions or even asking the questions to these people. They're too concerned about sex and scandals and all this bullshit. They're not digging into the black budget. You got to go to non-mainstream sources to find out anything that's really going on. This asshole. I'll read the last paragraph. there's currently no Cold War. Buddy, there's currently no Cold War unless you count strained relations with Russia. And the war on terror has calmed down. The military needs to be held accountable for our tax dollars and prove to us that there isn't an enemy from within by releasing what they have been hiding for so many years. Ha Greer, I'm talking about Dr. Greer of the Disclosure Project, Serious Project, and Unacknowledged Documentary. Greer might be a bit of an opportunist, but his mission to disclose this information is a mission we support. There we go. Okay. That makes me angry that this jerk-off who just discovered the subject is now interested in and is claiming that the mainstream media has been here all along and the public and non-mainstream media needs to get into this. Bullshit, motherfucker. All right. I'm getting a little angry about when these guys do this shit. But at least there's an article up in it. It's utahstories.com. It's very long. I don't know how thorough it is, but it seems to be a long. That's fair. We'll move on. We'll wrap this motherfucker up pretty soon. I'm having chest pain. All right. Okay. All right. Everyone calm down. Oh, boy. Everyone just calm down. Okay? Everyone's panicking a little bit. We're just going to calm down. 614-388-9109. And we're mostly happy to take your phone calls. And you can talk, just calm down, and wind down the show in a very serene and calm way. We're not going to get angry. No one's panicking. Oh, no. Everything's fine. Look, we're being told the truth about UFOs. Bigfoot's a myth. Dogman's a myth. Nothing's going on in the national parks. There's nothing going on there. Yeah, sure. People are disappearing. And, sometimes they show up again and they're dead in a place where that was already searched. Sure, but don't worry. Don't worry. Don't ask any questions. Not a big deal. Just keep on watching Friends and Seinfeld reruns like I like to do. And maybe you can even have an enjoyable life where you don't question anything going on around you. Oh, sure. Isn't that nice? That would be lovely. Lovely, isn't it? Lovely this world we're living in where everything seems flipped upside down. Oh, yes. Okay. I don't know if I have anything really critical to get to. I might just kind of bullshit here for the next 3 minutes before I get the fuck out of here. I will say a big thank you to all the people who subscribe on Patreon. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The audio-only version of Night Talk is going up on there. It's got its own RSS feed, so if you listen on your smartphone or care to listen on your smartphone, there's another RSS feed there, so you can download this as a podcast. We do have a PayPal. We got a giant donation in. My God, I got to start. I'm bad. I am a neglectful person when it comes to saying thanks sometimes because I'm so busy fighting the New World Order, as everyone knows, that sometimes I need to send out notes to people, and I'm gonna do that. So thank you to the people who donate through PayPal. I know some people don't want to use Patreon. I absolutely get that big time, and I'm very thankful for everyone who listens and continues to support the show. It means a lot to me. And a big shout out to Felix. Big time, buddy. I really appreciate it. I'm going to write you a note. And I'm going to start putting some more stuff up on Patreon starting this week. Not just the Night Talk only downloads, but I'm going to start posting up some additional audio content that I find fascinating, things that I come across that I watch. And I'll probably just get on there and blabber about nonsensical stuff. And that is starting this week. So check out the links in the description and tell a friend or an enemy about the show. I don't care who you tell. It doesn't matter to me. You can tell someone you hate about the show. That's fine. I'm okay with that. All right. Do I have any wrap-up music? I do. I do have some wrap-up music right here. Ah, there it is. Yes. No. We are getting out of here. This is the end of Night Talk Live. I did it wrong. I gotta do it. Night Talk Live. Yes.
Wow, that's awful.
That is horrible. It's just
That is horrible. It is awful. Joe and I will be back on a Wednesday for an Our Big Dumb Mouth podcast. We got plenty of stories to get to. A lot of shenanigans. A lot of tomfoolery. Oh, so much tomfoolery. You know, I've been actually staying kind of consistent watching the Roseanne TV show. It's funny. I like it. I haven't watched a new sitcom in so long that it's really kicking me in my nostalgia heart or nostalgia balls. It's kicking me right there. It's scratching that itch I need to get scratched. I'm not suggesting you watch it. I'm just implying that maybe you should. Maybe? No! Perhaps. I want to thank Jack Cary for taking time out of his day to join me on this very episode. Big time. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to get more guests. Or if you have any recommendations for anybody who you might think might be appropriate for this show, you can give me an email. ourbigdumbmouth@gmail.com. And I'll do my best to book them. We'll see what happens. Not promising anything.
Oh my God, Jay.
That's right.
Keep fucking that chicken.
No, that's right, too. Keep fucking that chicken.
Keep fucking that chicken.
Yeah. I always try to imagine what it's like for a person who hears the show for the first time. It's like, oh, they're going to talk about paranormal stuff. And then but now they're cursing. Why are they cursing? They don't got to curse.
Oh, come on now. Look out for a brother, man. Come on.
Yeah. Probably pretty off-putting. That's why we're not a bigger show. I understand that, people. I understand. You got to do what you like sometimes, regardless of the consequences. All right. Thanks for tuning in, hanging out. I appreciate you all. I'll see you next time. Shablagoo.